from the vault, high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Talking Catholic. With you today, your co-host Marianela Nunez and Mike Walsh. How are you, Mike, today?
I'm good. For our listeners, I am back in the vault again. This is the first time I think I've done a recording in here since February. So even though at the top of every broadcast we have Father Robert Sinatra is the voice of Talking Catholic, introducing us as being the vault high atop the Diocese of Camden. This is the first time I'm actually back in there since February. So it's kind of nice, actually. I had it painted in that time, and it's now this big, bright yellow, and I like it. This room is, yes. I painted it yellow because it's supposed to inspire creativity. So hopefully I'll ask very creative questions today.
Well, I hope I can have some creative questions being in my white office today. Close to you.
Now, if on cue, your office phone rings, of course.
Of course. So basically, today I am in my office because we are keeping our social distance in here in the Diocese of Camden. So we are working, we are behaving. Right, Mike?
That's right. Working and behaving.
Yes.
Even though we're back for business, you walk between the offices, you put your mask on, you go to the bathroom, you put your mask on, you do anything away from your desk, you put your mask on. I have to give credit to the diocese. They were good enough to give us all wipes and hand cleaner.
Hand sanitizers, yeah.
Hand sanitizer on our desks the first day back we got here. So I have to say, we're recording this a little early. We're recording this at the end of June. So even though it's going out in July, I have to give everyone a lot of credit. We've been open for about 3 weeks now, and all of my colleagues are following the rules and being appropriately socially distant and, keeping themselves clean. And actually, I saw one of your coworkers, Marianela, every time she rides the elevator, she wipes down all the buttons on both the inside and the outside.
I know who that is.
Yes. So people are definitely taking this seriously, and that makes me very happy to see. So,
yeah. And we thank the diocese for trying to protect us and bring us back to work.
Yeah. Although I will admit that while I was doing a lot of work during the shutdowns, I only got about a week at home, and I kind of missed it a little bit. I had to figure out. All of a sudden, I know we're going to talk to teachers today, and I'm curious how they've enjoyed their extended summer vacation, though. I'm not sure you would actually call it that, just working from home for an extra 3 months before summer vacation starts. But, before we bring them on board, Marianela, how is your summer vacation going, or your summer going, now that you're back in work?
Well, it's kind of slow, it's still with the COVID-19 related thing going on, and we know it's not going away still. We haven't really planned to go away. We're trying to stay home and just do work around our yard. And that's what we're doing this summer. We don't know if we're going to be able to go away, but at least I'm going to try to go to the beach.
Yeah. We're in the same boat. We have no plans for vacation this year. I think the only thing we're even kind of kicking around the idea of doing right now is maybe a camping vacation to one of the local state parks or something like that. Yeah. We fortunately, both myself, my wife, and my son, we all like to camp, so we might do that. But we'll see. Now that the campgrounds have been reopened.
Mike, that just gave me an idea. You should do a podcast about what things people can do to enjoy this summer, even under COVID-19 circumstances. So that might be one of the things. So
That's not a bad idea. Last year we had a podcast with the Boy Scouts from one of their campgrounds where they have a chapel. They have a Catholic chapel on one of the local South Jersey campgrounds. Maybe we'll have to do that, something even more expanded, how to vacation during Corona times. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if that one pops up.
Let's think about it. But for today, Mike, we have a very interesting podcast with heroes in COVID-19 times. And these are some of our amazing teachers in two of our schools in the Diocese of Camden, South Jersey Catholic schools. We have with us today John Clement, who is a teacher of religions of the world at Holy Spirit High School. Welcome, John.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Sure. And we also have with us Trish. Trish is from John Paul II, and she is a first grade teacher. And we have her accompanying us today to do this podcast, schools related, to talk about, how their experience was during the COVID-19 time and how they sort of like learn how to teach in a totally different way and how that went. And we also want to know about them. They have such interesting stories, and you need to stay with us to hear about them.
And let's give Trish her due. It's Trish Babnew from John Paul II School. So, Mrs. Babnew, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And I'm curious, we'll start with you. When things sort of hit in early to mid-March, and we weren't sure what was going to happen, but we suddenly realized we had to go to, remote learning. How much turnaround time did you have to doing your normal lesson plans to completely new lesson plans?
Yes, we left. We always teased because it was Friday the 13th when we left, and we never went back after that. It was a real, everything kind of switched overnight. And I think it was really hard with the younger ones because they feed on interaction amongst one another. And that's why when I chose the platform, we chose Zoom for the younger ones because they need that interaction. I could tell by their faces if they're following along. And one hard part was just the parents. They just came together. Unbelievable. I mean, some of the parents, they're going to college online, they're working from home, have 2 and 3 kids at home, and then they're managing to get them on Zoom, get all the assignments done. And it was just amazing how it took a good 2 or 3 weeks just to get a routine and a schedule. Technology was a challenge, not only with myself, but then teaching. I have some of my students are raised by their grandparents. So you have a 70-year-old lady trying to figure out all these new forms. So it's like, God bless them, how they managed to come through. I had a great group to work with. I was really lucky.
Oh, that's good to hear. It's good to hear that you had some positive feedback and positive responses from people. How about you, John? How was it at the high school level?
We I think sort of midway through February, there was discussions that it was a possibility. And my school was actually very proactive in making sure we were all well-versed in Google and that we sort of had we were all on the same page as what type of virtual learning we'd be doing. We officially closed on the 13th also, but we came in on that following Monday, and just sort of as a send-off to the faculty, we prayed a little and we said, here's what our goal is for the first couple weeks. And we were kind of flying blind when we left, in the sense that we weren't sure, was this going to be 3 weeks where we're just going to clean the school? Is it going to be more than that? And so there was a feeling of, well, we're okay for now. That sort of changed quickly when we realized sort of, I think, the enormity of the task of teaching online.
Yeah, that is, I think it's often forgotten now that we're 3 or 4 months past that when this first happened, it was all expected to be a short-term fix. We figured it would just be a couple of weeks when we'd be back to school, we'd figure something out. And as it was seen from across the country, no, it was this suddenly became a very long-term affair, which I have to imagine caused probably a mindset change from the very beginning, where it was that short-term to the realization that it was going to be the last 3 months were going to be a matter of remote learning. So I'm curious, Trish, when did you kind of realize that this was going to have to be something more than just a couple of weeks of?
Right. We kept praying that we were going back.
Yeah,
we felt the same thing that you're saying. When they first did it, it was kind of exciting. They got to sleep in late and all of that. Then after a while, that wore off.
Yeah.
And we realized that it was going to be.
So how do you teach? Young kids, sort of Zoom. Take me through what a typical Monday through Friday was when you hit your stride.
Yeah. Okay. So at 4:00 the previous day, we always had to send our assignments out, and then I would get up in the morning and I would give a good morning message, and then every day we would have Zoom from 11 to 12. But then also that would switch because I would do small groups of Zoom to check reading fluencies. And sometimes they just needed a one-on-one. Some of the kids emotionally, it was hard too, adjusting to being at home, and, their parents were working on the computer and things like that. But that was the typical day. And then emails would just come in throughout till almost 10 at night. And that's the difference between, I think, the younger ones and the older ones. You can kind of hold them accountable, where the little ones, they really need that parental involvement or an adult helping them. So I would say 5 and after is when all the assigned work would come in. But it was like constant emails, just helping people upload things, figuring out the technology, where if the children are having trouble, we could arrange, like I said, the individual Zooms and things like that. But
I know I have a 6th grader and going into 7th grade. And I think that was the thing we learned most quickly, was that the school day, we'd all gotten used to a school day being, 8 to 2:30, typical school day. And in reality, the school day became, in our house, became 9 to 10 o'clock at night. And it wasn't, so to sort of muddle my references here, I began to realize about a month into my working life that work-life balance wasn't the thing anymore. I started to refer to it as work-life stew, where it just really all became interconnected. And I found that was very similar in my son's study habits as well, and school habits as well, that while there was, the typical 9 to 4 when we were expecting him to study, some things just took longer, or the day became sort of got away from us and we couldn't work on things like we would ordinarily do. And so there was work coming in at night. I get the impression, sounding from you, that that's kind of what happened as well. Was it that you would have like sort of breaks in the day where not a lot of stuff would happen, then sort of everything came in at the end of the day?
Yes. And I had some parents who are working in the medical profession, so the kids were with babysitters. So they would come home at like 9 and 10, and then they would upload everything to me. And you just had to be flexible, because everybody's schedule was so, they were kind of just thrown into this, and everybody's trying to make it work the best they can.
How was it being flexible? Go ahead, John.
Actually, I picked up on that also when she said be flexible. I think the one challenge that I faced immediately was learning flexibility, in the sense that there were students who, and Trish mentioned that there were students who had babysitters. I think a lot of my students were babysitters, or there were families who shared laptops, or there were students who I would have contact with a student who would say they woke up at 4, and I would think, is that AM or PM? And I would try to explore whether that was indicative of, is this some type of depression? Is it something going on in the family dynamic? Is it just that they like to sleep? And so I tried to be patient with sort of the work that was turned in and timing of contact. If I got emails at 11 at night, I didn't, get angry and tried to understand that every out of the 100 students I had or whatever, that there's all types of different dynamics and things going on trying to deal with this new normal.
Well, I'm curious, what was sort of when you hit your stride, what was it like for you? Like, how were you sending out assignments and your expectations?
It actually took a lot of trial and error and a lot of time before I hit my stride. And what I found worked best for me was I used a couple different apps. One was called Screencastify, that allowed me to have a document or a PowerPoint on my computer with my face down on the bottom, and I would record lessons. It would basically be a lecture. I would then deliver that, a night before, set to release at 8 a.m. when our school day would start. And then through the course of the day, there would be an assignment that was a component to it that would follow up or reinforce the lecture. And students would turn it in anytime from, 9 a.m. if they started my lesson right away, up till, who knows what hour of night. And that served as attendance, and it served as a grade in the sense that we're assessing that they actually watched the lecture and they understood it. What I would do would be then go back and review their work the next day and either tweak my delivery in the sense that I realized that, wow, they really understood this, or I completely missed the mark on this. The next day I would be available for Zoom for anyone who didn't understand. I found that more and you mentioned when we started, Marianela mentioned that I teach world religion. I also teach a introductory to law class. So the religion aspect, really, they kind of grasped it right away, but I would get a lot of Zooms on my law classes that kids didn't understand the concept just because the material is just a little more difficult.
Yeah. It's funny, you're talking about the apps. About a third of the way through my son's class, I realized his teacher was using Screencastify and ended up using it as even an assignment to send back. So my son had to do an assignment on Greek mythology, as a matter of fact, and as part of his world history class. And part of it was he had to give his own presentation. So because I was helping him with it, that was the first time I had ever come to use Screencastify, and I found it to be brilliant. I was like, what an incredible concept. The thing with these were all business. A lot of these were like business apps that we found had really great potential in school. Zoom was one of them, and Microsoft Meetings, and there's now a number of these sort of ways of communicating in groups. But yeah, that Screencastify was outstanding. I'm curious, for the two of you, and we're kind of getting ahead here a little bit, but just looking at the future, are there things that you found that you could use as part of these remote learning opportunities that when schools do come together again, you think you might utilize as part of your in-school work?
As far as technology?
Well, and not just technology, but like tricks that you had to do because we were put into this virtual world that you might find beneficial when we go back to in-person classrooms.
I would say that, and I think I alluded to a little bit earlier, the sense that you had to be flexible, that there's so many different dynamics in each household. And I think sometimes I struggle to understand that in person. You have a student there in front of you who is maybe, very cordial with me and respectful of faculty and friendly with their classmates. But sometimes I forget that they probably, or they could possibly have things going on at home. And if they don't turn homework in, it's not impersonal to me, or that they don't care about their schooling. That I guess I sometimes have to try and remember that, school's not operating in a vacuum, and there's all kinds of influences on students' lives. We'll get into this, I'm sure, a little more, but teaching seniors was an extra challenge this year, especially as we're hitting, February, March. They're starting to get all of those rewards of 4 years of work, award ceremonies and prom and graduation, and they slowly saw that slipping away from them as we went further and further into virtual learning. And I could really see the toll it was taking on my students just when I would have some type of contact with them. And I learned kind of quickly that they don't all have the same support structure at home, whether it's someone to talk to about their frustration, or they're quarantined in their bedroom for 20 hours a day and they were struggling.
Yeah. That's what a great perspective. I hadn't even really considered that this is giving you would think that in-person in-person situation would lend yourself to that same sort of rapport, but maybe, being able to talk to somebody from their actual home, you were getting an even greater insight into what they were going through.
Yeah, you rely so much on social cues in the classroom, in the sense that, body language, it really can show engagement in the lesson, and just interactions in the hallway. You kind of get a feel for what type of day they're having. It was real easy those first couple of weeks to kind of lose that whole element. It's just you're delivering material, you're getting work back. You're delivering material, you're getting work back. But there's no real sense behind it whether or not they're struggling personally, or and then eventually students started reaching out and just saying, Mr. Clement, I'm really worried we're not going to have prom, or I can't believe I'm missing my whole baseball season. And I didn't have answers for them, and I didn't have even a comparable situation from my life to say, well, listen, this happened to me and we'll get through it. It was sort of, we were all learning how to deal with this together. And it was frustrating to see some students who really, I wasn't sure whether they had a support system anywhere other than their friends who didn't have answers either.
Wow. And Trish, that was something you alluded to as well, but I'm curious, just to get back to my original question, because I do want to talk about student interaction a little bit more as well. Just to go back to the original question, Trish, related to, are there any techniques you picked up as part of virtual learning that you might try to bring back into the class?
Yes. My children really like Flipgrid, which is like they create a little video and it's a way to assess them. And I thought that was really good because sometimes it's so hard to test, and we were trying to test throughout the system. But that was a way where I could see them individually. So I thought that was something I'd like to use too in the classroom, and they really enjoyed it. They liked the videos and all of that. One big challenge was my Spanish-speaking population. Like John was saying, like, you don't know all they're going through. Like the parents trying to work through this system, they were unbelievable. I had older brothers and sisters in high school that were sending all the assignments, like stepping up to the plate. And then we had meetings with our Spanish-speaking population, but just unbelievable. Like sometimes you're not aware of that in the classroom because we have so much help in school. But outside of school, when they were at home, it was a big challenge just trying to reach them. I think that was my worry. Am I reaching them enough? And then my principal had a meeting with all our Spanish-speaking parents. And so there were so many outlets that we had to open up more to make sure we were reaching them. So that was a big challenge. And just to be really aware of that, I think, like I said, in the school, we have a lot of people coming in, helping. But at home, it was a big challenge for them. So I think I want to be more aware of that as the next year.
Do you feel more connected, Trish, as
I do. My Spanish-speaking population is just, I mean, they were like crying at the end when we left the last day. They are just so warm-hearted, and I feel a connection like I've never felt before. I know people say you think remote learning, you feel more of a distance, but they just shared their whole lives with me. I said from meeting their dog on Zoom to their brothers and sisters. And it's just, I mean, they would send me emails to say that, you know, they got a new hamster, they had learned how to ride their bike. Just like a real close connection that I was really surprised because I thought remote learning would be more distant. But I feel like I've come to know, especially the parents and the families, so much better and have realized, I mean, some of them had deaths throughout this process. There's all different things going on, and they just shared everything. And just, I think that's where we really felt that sense of community. And our school, too, had the masses every Friday, virtual masses with Father Vince. And I thought that was just beautiful, too. The children wanted that sense of normalcy and things going. Like even every day when I begin Zoom, we began with a prayer. Sometimes the children made up the prayer, the Pledge of Allegiance. And it took 5 or 10 minutes out of the Zoom, but the children really needed that sense of feeling that it was that routine. I think that made them feel more relaxed.
Yeah. And, you know, that's actually a question I was going to ask both of you, though John is kind of works into your area of expertise. I was going to ask how were you able to sort of maybe not recreate, but make sure that you were still bringing in that sense of faith, because we are a Catholic school, so it wasn't just about reading, writing, arithmetic. You know, we did have to reinforce, you know, sort of the Catholic nature of our schools. So Trish, were you able to, in addition to, you know, prayer time, were you able to find other ways of introducing the Catholic faith into your studies?
Yes, we try to intertwine it with everything as we're teaching it. And like I said, the Mass was a great thing. They all enjoyed going to the Mass on Friday. It was every Friday at 9:00. They could live stream it. And just always, yeah, I think that's the whole thing, that Jesus, and that's what I saw throughout all of this. You really saw that sense of community and that feeling of God-centered everything was throughout the whole process.
How about you, John?
Yeah, my material, just by the nature of it, incorporates faith. And towards the end of the year, we were studying Buddhism and we were studying different religions in China. It gave us an opportunity to really focus on mindfulness and meditation. So I would try to incorporate, you know, think about your own faith and bring your own thoughts and hopes into that lesson. But I would send them different meditations and just reminders to take time and think about your faith, to especially in this time when there's, you know, so much anxiety and frustration, that know that you have that there to fall back on. And 4 years you've been studying your faith, and hopefully it's something that your family is using to cope with this. But remember, it's there for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. There's a picture of you, both of you actually. We did an article in the Star Herald where you know, we sort of like interview you. There's by Mary Beth Peabody, and there's a picture of Trish holding a I don't know how to call it, Mike. Help me out.
It was a balance, a homemade balance.
Yes, a homemade balance. So during this time where things are changing, teaching is changing, what would you tell to a young teacher that is like looking to get into this world? Well, we need to be balanced in our life, and Mike talk about like the work life too. What would you tell to a teacher that loves teaching, but it maybe is scared of new times and the new teaching styles?
I think you got to be open to it, because I was nervous. I've been teaching over 20 years, and this was all new for me to go totally remote. I just think just to remain open and always have the children's best interest at heart. I think if you're always working for it, like I said, there was lots of times when you saw this wasn't working, like John said, and then you would reteach, or just always, you have to be open to new things. I'm 50 years old and I figured it out, so I'm like, so I think you just have to be open. And I think in primary grades, like first grade, very interactive. And you can even find ways, like we did STEM projects. I would record and we would start the experiment, and then we would come back in a couple of days and we would see the results. So there's all different ways around it, because sometimes you think it can't be done, but you'd be amazed at all they did and things they would find around their house to do the little projects we did, and just being flexible, and whatever they had, we used. And so I just think just being open, and if you always have the children's best interest at heart, I think that's
great. What about you, John?
I completely agree. As long as I think that you're coming from a place of care and love for the students, that you'll find a way to make it work. And creativity in assignments, I think being sort of literate with technology, if you have an open mind to, like Mike said, just sort of playing around with Screencastify or using Flipgrid and creating assignments that sort of incorporate that and ask the students to do something that maybe pushes their boundaries a little, but sort of still delivers the material. There's ways to do it, and it can be really fun, and it can really sort of capture those students that normally just sit in the class and stare off into space. If now they're in charge of their own presentation, or you're asking them to create something that normally you wouldn't think to do, it's an opportunity, I think, to expand the way that we teach. You just have to be able to roll with the punches and understand that you're not going to hit a home run every time with every assignment. But I think the students are patient with you if they know exactly what Trish said, which is you're coming from a place of love and you're doing your best, and you truly are doing your best. It works, and you find a way to teach, and you find a way to sort of get across to those students that you're there for them.
What things did you guys do during the time of, where we were on quarantine and you were teaching a lot of hours? Maybe your day started really early and ended late, and you still have a life, you still had families to take care of. And what things did you do to sort of like maintain that mental health during that time?
I tried to have a routine. I spent time sort of with teaching my children their classwork. So as Mike sort of suggested, we've also suggested there wasn't a typical 8 to 3:30 school day. I would do some of my work. I would do some of their work. I always made time to exercise. I tried to make dinner. Nobody was really leaving the house, so I tried to make dinner a time where we all just put our devices aside. Even if, as silly as it sounds, we would talk about our day, or what did you do in school today that was interesting? And sort of at least having that daily routine would allow me to decompress a little. And then, as Mike said, even though I knew work was still coming in at 8, 9, 10 at night, I would just put my phone and my iPad away and not deal with it till the morning.
Yeah, I think too. I have 3 children. I have 2 in high school and 1 7th grade now an 8th grader. And I thought it was neat to connect to really what they were learning too. Before, you're not always aware of everything. My kids play sports. You come home, it's dinner time. You're running all around. And I got to really see what they were learning. And especially my 7th going into 8th grader, he was really wanted to show me. And I thought it was pretty neat to see everything and have good discussions. Taking walks was a way that I handled, just maybe like after dinner, just say I'm going to go for a walk for a little bit and just kind of release in that way after dinner. And that was kind of.
I was the same way, Trish. That I took more walks over the last and continue to do so over the last 3 or 4 months than I've ever taken in my adult life. And I found that I loved it because All right, this is going to sound strange. It's a bit of a digression, but during my commute every day, I would listen to podcasts, lots of them, like many, many podcasts, like we're doing right now. And I was starting to get frustrated in late March because I realized I had this backlog of podcasts that I wasn't listening to. And I was like, oh man. And that would be how I would it was how I get in, because I listen to a lot of news podcasts. So that's how I get informed of the world. But it's also, I listen to a lot of comedy ones, and that's how I'd relax. And I didn't have that anymore. I found it actually physically frustrating. So I found that if I went out for a walk, that was my way of sort of, decompressing, getting my stuff again. And so now I walk like back in the day, a walk for me would be 15 minutes. Now I'm walking 3 miles all around, like an hour and a half, all around my, not quite that long, all around my neighborhood, through Rowan University, through places I've never been for. I get on my bike, same thing. My goal was whatever I did is I had to leave for an hour, and then I would come back. And I always felt so much better after it. But yeah, now, did you find you were walking by yourself or if you were exercising?
Yeah, but sometimes by myself. My kids were still doing work sometimes. So I think it was good too to be like away, give everybody a break from each other all day long.
Sanity walk. There you go.
That's great.
And John, you kind of mentioned, taking the seniors out of it. We've talked a little bit about the back and forth with the students. Do you get an impression, and this is for both you, John and Trish, do you get an impression that did the students, from a student's perspective, were they getting comfortable with the idea of this remote learning, or do you get a sense that they kind of want to come back to the classroom?
Absolutely come back to the classroom. And the first couple of days almost had that sort of snow day feel where they felt like, wow, this is awesome. We're getting away with it. And I would say not as long as you think, maybe a week in, some of them are saying, this is awful. I miss my friends. I miss the teachers. I miss the routine of a day. And I, as I sort of said earlier, I think part of that also was it was starting to become clearer that this was not just the school closing for a cleaning and we're going to reopen. The uncertainty of how long it was going to last was starting to become more and more clear that this could have been what it ended up being was the whole school year. So they were all saying, God, I never thought I'd miss school. Even the ones who I was positive that they were going to say, nope, I am cool with this. I play video games all day. I eat all day long. Almost to a student, they wanted to be back in the building.
Really? Wow. That's wonderful. How about you, Trish?
I agree 100%. Even on my Zoom, it would end after an hour. They would ask to stay on. So I would let them stay on and just socially interact because they missed each other so much. And so it was funny because one mom kept teasing me. She's like, Mrs. Babnew, this is going to go on a half an hour, they'll just stay on. So then I just told them they could make up their own Zooms and they could talk to each other.
Wow.
That's actually really nice. That was very kind of you to do that.
They really missed each other. They were such a tight-knit group. Our classroom family, we call them, and they really miss each other. So now they're finally getting out and having little play dates. They've been sending me some emails saying they're getting to see each other. So they're happy about that.
Good.
Wondering, what are your thoughts now that, the year ended and, Catholic schools were able to make it successfully. I think we really didn't have much time to prepare. Nobody did. So I think we did a very good job in terms of what the students were able to accomplish and what the teachers were able to do, to make sure that the students still were learning and engaging and doing a lot of the things to keep a sense of normalcy and to keep sort of like developing their learning. So now that the year has ended, how do you feel about next year coming up, and what are your thoughts? What are you going to miss of remote learning if it's not going to be done in September? What are those things that you'll be like, oh, I wish I could still do that?
I would say the deep connection to the families. I felt like I got to know the families on a daily basis. They would come on my Zoom, say good morning, and they would sing the songs, and there's a lot of them. And so just that interaction, the daily interaction with the families on this. But I know the students will love being back together. I think but it's going to be a challenge, I admit, because first graders are they would come in and hug each other. So I think there's going to be a lot of challenges, especially with the little ones who are very, touchy, and it's going to be a deep challenge. Yeah. But I'm sure they'll adjust, right? But I just think, like you said, it's a deep testament to our faith. The parents at the end, the emails that I got, I could just cry. Just how they all came together and they all made it work. I think it took all of us. They say it takes a village. It took the parents, the teachers, the students, all of us, my principal, all the faculty. I think we shared with each other. That was a big thing. When teachers found a good source or something good to use, we would email each other, and just always keeping that sense of community all the way around, from parents, teachers, and the families.
That's great.
I would say if there's one thing I miss, and we mentioned it a little, Trish mentioned it, that she was involved in the day-to-day sort of lessons of her children. It would be family time. I mean, I was able to work, and, I could walk right down the hall and see what my children were doing all day. I'll miss that, but other than that, as far as delivery of material and connections with my students, I can't wait to be back in the building. To sort of just, I guess, dovetail of what you guys said, I agree. The sense of family that my school always had before this really, I think, created the foundation that we were able to be successful doing this. I also heard from so many seniors and parents that said, just being such a tight-knit school and caring so much about the students really provided that little extra element that the people I know who are part of public schools didn't have. And, they finished their school year, they had their lessons, but there's that sort of extra, a little bit effort that everyone went in, making sure your students are okay mentally, making sure that any type of issues are covered, as far as maybe students didn't have internet access or they don't have access to a computer. Our school sort of went over and above, making sure that everyone had access to everything. And it really is a testament to Catholic schools, that the way that we sort of just transitioned, pivoted, and we just kept going, and there's that extra level of care there.
I've actually been hearing that feedback from a couple of sources that said that they're actually, some of the schools are finding that a number of public school kids are migrating to Catholic schools for next year, simply because we don't know what next year is going to look like. And I am going to ask you a little bit about that in a few minutes. But that because the Catholic schools really just went out of the way to provide such a level of service to the Catholic students that was not found in a lot of public schools in a lot of towns, that those parents are now considering sending their kids to a Catholic school because of that, which I think is a great testament to what Catholic schools are able to provide. We've said since I've come to the diocese in the last 5 years, that's been part of our marketing and everything that we do, is that there is something else that occurs at a Catholic school that you're not going to get at a public school. Sometimes for some people, that's just the fact that we celebrate our faith. But there's also something more intangible, something more ethereal about what Catholic schools provide. It's, we're not providing this because we have to provide this. We're providing this Catholic school education because we want to provide it, that we want to offer to your children something that they can't get anyplace else. And what that thing is may be different for every family, but I guarantee you will get something at a Catholic school that you do not get at public school. Apparently the joyousness of their teachers, at least these two, would be one of those things. So thank you very much for always providing that to students. I'm kind of curious, we're recording this at the end of June right now. We have no idea what next year is going to look like. The guidelines have not been announced right now as from the state of New Jersey. And I know that the diocese has a Blue Ribbon group coming together to sort of decide how we might be able to reopen in the fall. Do either of you two have ideas about how you'd like to see Catholic schooling look in the fall yet? Or are you waiting sort of to see what comes out from around the country? I know it's a big question I just asked. Big unknown.
I've tried, I think even from the beginning of this, I've tried not to. For a while, I was addicted to every day looking at the numbers and looking at and seeing what Dr. Fauci had to say and seeing what other districts were doing. And I became almost obsessed with the fear of the uncertainty. And I think I've had to take a step back, and I've tried not to really picture what September is going to look like just yet. I think I want to wait and see. I went to Villanova University, and last night they released sort of their plan for the fall, and I couldn't help myself. And I delved into it to see, and they're doing sort of a hybrid of online and in person. that they're canceling intramurals, but they're going forward with Division I sports. And it's interesting to see their approach, because it's one of the first ones that I've really taken the time to look at. So to answer your question, Mike, I haven't really envisioned anything yet. I know that Holy Spirit is doing their best right now to explore many different options depending on what type of parameters the state and the diocese put forward. So I'm kind of trying to be loose with what I guess I'll be able to do in terms of seeing my students in person. I hope there'll be some form of in-building education, but I'm prepared for just about anything.
That's good. That's very mentally healthy.
That's the mentality. Yeah.
Take, you know what? I always feel bad that I've asked the question now. Take June and July off. We'll worry about it in August. But that being said, Trish, since John gave us his perspective, you have a perspective on what schools might look like?
I do. We'd like to be in person, of course. But I think now we're open to everything. And now that we've been exposed to it, I don't feel as, like when it first came out, there was a lot of anxiety. But now I think we've been exposed to it. So maybe there'll be a little bit of both. I mean, you hear all different scenarios, you know, you come in the morning and remote learning, or some students might not want to come in because of health issues. So there might have to be a remote option. But I know the principals and Bill Watson, everybody's working hard to figure all this out and make sure the children are safe. I think that's the most important, safety of the children.
How prepared do you feel, both of you, to do this in any way that comes? Like, both of you have said you would be sort of like fine with any way of teaching that comes up in September, like whatever you have to do to get, to teach children. How prepared do you feel for like remote learning right now that you have been exposed to it? Like what are the things that you might be willing to learn during the summer to maybe make yourself better at it? Or do you feel like you're equipped to do it at this point?
I think, go ahead, Trish.
No. I was just going to say there's always so much to learn. I'm open to learning. There's so many different platforms to use. And I think as educators, that's where it really helps sharing what's working and what's not working. And I think on John's level, some things will work where on the primary grades, we use different outlets. So I just think sharing and being open. I think there's much more to learn though.
Yeah, I think there's two things that I think spring to mind when you asked your question. One is technology. I sort of stumbled on Screencastify, but I'm sure other apps in development right now that could make it so much more effective. The one thing I think my concern is that if it's completely virtual in the fall, I think there's an element of students need to have a personal relationship with their teacher in the sense they have to know them a little bit. And it would be, in my eyes, a complete struggle to teach a group of students that I've never really connected with. We were, in a sense, lucky that this happened at the end of the year because I had relationships with all of my students. They knew who I was. They knew my level of care for their education and for them as people. And so it made it a little bit easier. So I think it would be almost too, clinical if it is just we start the year all virtual and we go a whole year of just through videos and Zoom. You kind of lose a little bit of element of connection there.
Yeah. I tend to agree that some sort of a hybrid at the very least would probably be most beneficial. But if there's one thing I am absolutely certain of, I am not a genius when it comes to education or germ warfare. So I will definitely defer to the experts when that time comes. Unfortunately, in the diocese, we have good experts. In the state of New Jersey, we have good experts. So that's good to know. We've been talking to you about, sort of like the last 4 months a lot, but we are curious about sort of your backgrounds. So as we're sort of wrapping up the podcast, we wanted to ask each of you, how you got into schooling and or being an educator and where you came from and why you did it. So Tricia, let's start with you. What made you want to become a teacher?
Ever since I think I was 5 years old, I wanted to be a teacher. My mom always tells the funny story. I was always teaching. So I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. And then I taught in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia for 11 years at St. Leo's. They have since closed. And then after I got married, I stayed home with my children. I have 3 children. So I did stay home for about 10 years. And now I'm kind of back into it and glad to be back. But so now I'll be entering my 5th year at John Paul. It's coming September. So.
That's great. How about you, John? Aside from the fact that I'm a St. Joe's grad and you're a Villanova grad, that's, I don't think you're okay.
I'm Villanova too. So John, we're
I got
together.
another Villanova one on here.
Yes. His story is interesting.
Yeah, I graduated Villanova with a history degree, and
Hey, I graduated St. Joe's with a history degree, and had planned on becoming a teacher and was unsuccessful. So, congratulations.
there is common ground. I ended up going to law school in the University of Miami down in Florida, and I practiced law for 15 years. I bounced around all different types of law because I couldn't find one that actually, at the end of the day, made me happy. I was pretty miserable in my career as an attorney, and I sort of just quit. I just kind of walked away and said, I need something that's more fulfilling, that's more satisfying. It didn't really hit my radar to teach until I just as just a source of money, I decided to substitute teach, and I fell in love with the connections that I made with the students. This will be my 6th year at Holy Spirit. I love teaching. I love seeing that sort of light bulb click on, that they are understanding a concept. I love the daily interactions and getting to know the kids, and sort of senior year is interesting because it's sort of a mix of that excitement of what the future holds, and it's the bittersweet sort of end of their friendships as they see it. It's a completely satisfying and rewarding career, and I just love doing it.
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear. I come from a family of educators, and I did teach for 1 year, and I absolutely loved it. And I do hope to go back to it someday when I'm so jaded with PR, I can't possibly put up with it any longer. I'll go become a teacher, hopefully a history teacher somewhere, or maybe I'll teach PR in college. I don't know, something like that. But that's always been my goal. So we sort of opened this podcast with Marianela and I talking a little bit about vacations and whatnot. I'm curious, now that you finally have virtual school behind you and remote learning behind you, how are you planning to spend your summer vacations? And think of this as the preview to what you always have to ask: how I spent my summer vacation. How do you want to spend your summer? How about you, Trish?
My parents have a place in Wildwood Crest, so they have a condo. So I hope to make it down there. We still haven't made it down there yet, so I hope to get some vacation time in there and relaxation. Everything kind of got thrown up in the air because I was supposed to work a summer job, but now it's not happening. So I'm kind of in search of a summer job in the midst of all this stuff.
Oh, a true teacher. That summer job. Oh man, my father painted houses for years until he was a year-round teacher for his school district. But, how about you, John?
I also had in the summers, I typically do run a summer camp for younger kids, and the city decided that the restrictions were too great and that the exposure was too high, so they scrapped the whole camp. So I found myself half scrambling to find something and half really enjoying going to the beach every day. I think it's going to be a mix of that. I'm gonna find something that brings in some money. I do coach soccer for Holy Spirit, so we're sort of putting together, based around the restrictions, some type of practices that we can start doing. Mid-July, we're allowed to meet our teams. So I'll do some of that. Hang with my kids, go to the beach. That's sort of the plan right now.
Well, it's hard to complain about an opportunity where you get to spend a little more time with your family, though, as you stated earlier, we have been spending a lot of time with our family lately. So, maybe a little alone time wouldn't be the worst idea as well. But yeah, this is a strange time period we're in where summer is rolled up, and I can't tell the difference between summer and spring right now, other than it's a lot more hot and humid outside.
That's right. John, and just out of curiosity, and I know we moved from the topic, but when you decided to sort of like leave your career in law, did you get a lot of pushback from people? Like, this is, I think, a good message for kids that, went to college for something and maybe they didn't find their vocation. You were brave enough to say, this is not what I want. This is not what I would like to spend my life on. I need to move on and do something different. So can you give a message to our listeners to move on if they're not happy where they are?
Sure. I think that, financial limitations or the fact that you have put 20 years with, schooling and experience into a career, at the end of the day, I was miserable. It was affecting my relationships. It was affecting my health. I struggled to find any fulfillment, and it was taking its toll on every aspect of my life. People did tell me I was, crazy maybe, to sort of just step aside, but it got to the point that I had to. And there was times when I thought, oh my gosh, what have I done? But I think the whole time I just had faith that, anything that at the end of the day, we have to sort of answer to ourselves when it comes to our happiness. And I just sort of followed my heart, and I am so thankful that I found my way into this career, and I found Holy Spirit in particular. It repaired what really could have been a really bad path that I was on.
That's
That
great.
sounds
Great.
very familiar, John. I did the exact same thing. I was a PR guy for a big Center City law firm in Philadelphia, and found it completely unrewarding. Found it financially rewarding in every way, shape, or form, and there were many rewards that came with it, but it took a great toll on my soul. And when I came here, took the cut in salary, and I've been happy every day. A little less happy during quarantine times, a little more overworked than I'm used to. Kind of actually reminded me back of the law firm days, as a matter of fact. But no, there is something, that's such a great question that you asked, Marianela, because I think people are afraid of making big changes that will be for their mental health, quite frankly, to leave a high-paying job and a high-pressure job to go look for something that you may find more rewarding. And I tell people, you certainly don't want to abandon your families to do it, and your family, your requirements to your family. But at the same time, I think there's a wisdom to finding a job that you're going to love, and one that really is a vocation. And certainly being a Catholic school teacher is a vocation. Tricia, I have to imagine even making the move from stay-at-home parent to teacher probably required a leap of faith as well, right?
Yes, definitely. But I just love it. Like I said, it is a vocation, and I get more from them probably than they get from me. It's just, I just always have felt fulfilled being a teacher. I've never regretted it.
I was going to ask you, Trish, we have the two cases here, you have stayed within your vocation. What would you say, to those who are in a place where they're happy and they might be looking at maybe do I stay? Do I do something else? But what is it that has kept you in this role as a teacher and made you figure out this is my vocation, this is where I belong, this is where God wants me?
Yeah, I think, like John said, your happiness and how you're fulfilled. And God was always a big thing. When I went into the public schools and was an aide as I worked my way slowly back in. And you just saw there just wasn't that connection. I couldn't connect to the kids in a certain way. I think your faith is such a part of you that you want to use it. And kids weren't getting along, and it was just such a different atmosphere. And I just felt like the Catholic school. I mean, a lot of people, you don't make as much money, but there's so much more important benefits to Catholic education. And I say with all my kids going to Catholic school, and just being there, the warm, welcoming feeling. I mean, I don't know if anybody knows, Father Vince, just the people around him, he's unbelievable. Like Father Vince, my kids are he's like Jesus. That's what I told him. He reminds us of Jesus. He just lets all the children come to him. It's just this
another guy who left.
There's a connection.
Yeah,
Father Vince let
become a priest.
You got it, Mike. I was just gonna say that. It's he left his book. He's
right.
just a lawyer. To become a priest. So
and he found his calling because he is loved beyond belief.
His story is great.
He's a great example. Well, thank you all very much for joining us today. I really appreciate that. Marianela, thank you very much for setting this up. I really wish you nothing but the best, but more importantly, I give you so much thanks for the fact that you were able to turn your your lesson plans around in a very short period of time and be that very important, strong teaching influence to these kids. And you and all the other teachers in the diocese deserve a lot of thanks for everything that you did for the students in what I know was very trying time. So thank you very much, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you again next week.